All right, so welcome to the Social Media for Local Candidates workshop, our live audience, which contains Bruce. Thanks for showing up, Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
He is the proxy for everyone at home who's watching this recorded. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Michael Whitehouse, the guy who knows a guy. I'm the author of the book, The Guy Who Knows a Guy. And I'm all about connecting, networking, bringing people together. And that's why I wanted to do this, because with local elections, the candidates getting the information out themselves is one of the most important ways to get news and information to the people. In many areas of the country, there is little or no local news. In our area, there is a local paper, which is good, but doesn't have the manpower, basically, to get all the nuances out to all the people. But if every candidate and every elected official had a strong social media presence sharing their story, then that message would get out to people through them directly. And for the most part, I find with local people, they tend to be pretty much in reality. They may disagree, but what they share tends to be fairly realistic, unlike national politics, which we're not going to talk about at all, where they have all kinds of things. Because when you're local, you can't get that far from reality. You know, you drive by it, you see it. People are going to see in the supermarket and be like, what are you talking about? So you can't really get around with making stuff up. So the first tip in using social media to build your message is to use it. Get out there, do something. I believe it's true for both parties, all parties. There tends to be a focus on the technical aspect of campaigning. So the get out the vote and the voter IDs and the knock it on the doors of your party people and all that kind of stuff, because that is the tried and true method to mathematically win an election. And I have watched literally as many people win with that as lose with it, because there's generally two parties running. One wins, one loses. They're both using the same strategy. But the reason that people actually win is that people like them. Voters know them and like them.
Right.
Usually it's the more popular candidate wins. It's kind of a popularity contest. So just identifying, well, I'm a Republican, so I'm going to make sure all the Republicans vote, and I'm a Democrat, and make sure all the Democrats vote, doesn't actually mean you'll necessarily win. Because people say, well, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I don't know the Democrats running, and I don't even know what it's about, so I'm just going to stay home. And that's why it's so hard to get people to get out and vote and care. So by using social media, you can engage with the public in a way that's going to make them care. You have an amazing platform as a candidate, because you can get out there with audio, video, text, interactive quizzes, all kinds of stuff at little or no cost, which is an awesome thing. But like in business, you can't just go out, as a candidate, you can't go out, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. Why? Similarly, you can't go out in business and be like, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. Instead, what you have to do is provide value. You have to give them something they want. People want to know what's going on. We think people are so disengaged. Nobody wants to hear about local news. No, nobody wants to read a poorly written local news article that describes who said what at the town meeting. But people definitely want to know what's going on, because if you look at the local community forums, there's all kinds of people be like, hey, what's happening with the liquor store down on Elm Street? Hey, why is Main Street all torn up? People want to know what's going on. So what you want to do is make yourself someone that they know, like, and trust. So first they have to know you. That's simply familiarity. Be out there a lot. There's a false idea that you want to craft your narrative exactly and have exactly the right brand, and only put yourself out a little bit. And what happens if you only put yourself out a little bit is you then get this kind of deep analysis. Well, he said this. What's he really mean? Because he only said one thing this month, and what could he possibly mean by that? Whereas if you're sharing 3 posts a day in a video, then they don't have time to worry about what you meant last week, because you've got 10 more pieces of content in between there. And if you're generally a good person, good stuff's going to come out. And if you're constantly putting out content, even if the other side does grab one of your videos and selectively pull things out of context, then your response is, okay, why are you watching that 30 seconds that they pulled out of context when I'm here live answering your questions? Don't listen to them, listen to me. I'll answer your questions. They didn't discover anything amazing. So, be more of yourself than they are, have more brand than they do. So the key thing is to be out there a lot, as much as possible. Because yeah, you're going to make some missteps, but in a local campaign, the other side doesn't have the manpower to make sure that your gaffe ends up spread all over. And also in a local campaign, people don't really want to hear about gaffes anyway. It's someone that they kind of know locally.
So what do you think is the best medium to use for being out there? So should you do static posts? Should you do video? Should you do polls? Where would you sort of rate different pieces of that?
You should do a bit of everything and whatever you're most comfortable with. You should be on the platforms that your customers are on, not customers, your constituents.
Yes,
They're kind of customers.
I talk like that too with my
Yep.
product. Right?
Yeah, so you definitely want to be on Facebook because that's where most people are. TikTok's not a bad place to be, but it tends to be a bit broader geographically. LinkedIn, again, hard to target locally. A lot of communities have Facebook groups that you can be in, and usually the most engaged people are in those groups. And generally, while those groups may have rules against campaigning, they won't have rules against information. And a lot of the groups don't prevent you from going live or posting videos. So the best thing to do is video if you are competent to be on camera. And if you're not competent to be on camera, you probably shouldn't be running for office anyway. So you don't have to be.
And your best camera is.
Yep.
Right.
You don't have to be movie quality. You don't have to be a seriously engaging speaker. You just have to be honest and sincere and talk, fireside chat. Talk to them like you're on the front porch or in the diner. And it can be as simple as going on Facebook, going live, pulling the phone out and be like, hey guys, I just read this in the paper and I'd love to share my opinions about it. Or I just found this thing out and I want you to know about it. Sharing that information. I've seen a couple of our local elected officials be fairly effective with this, dumping information to the groups. And sometimes it's long articles, which most people probably don't read, but what they do is they associate that official with lots of information.
Right.
She's not hiding anything. She's dumping lots of information. Look how much information she's given us. It also gives people the impression of that they can probably ask you questions. And it kind of creates those opportunities for encounters. So there's a few different ways you can engage. Talk about Facebook specifically because it's the thing that most people are on. Text posts are good, and you can do long things where you're sharing, all the knowledge in the world, or even just a couple of paragraphs and a link. Here's something happened, or here's something, especially if you're in office. Here's something that was shared with us by the town manager, the mayor, the whatever, the governor. Because as an elected official, you get all kinds of information sent to you from all kinds of sources, which is public. It's just not disseminated. So you can take that
a weekly newsletter, or just the weekly tip, the tip for the week, and just run that as a continual.
Absolutely, yeah. Tip of the week, yeah. If you're more organized, have a weekly newsletter where you're sharing like here's specific information, things you might want to know. If you're less organized, just kind of as things come up, shoot them out there.
Should you always have a photo in your posts?
Photos are generally a good idea just because people tend to see them more. And if you don't have a photo of yourself, now sometimes depending on the content, there might be a map or something goes along with it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not necessarily a picture of yourself, but that informational picture, whether you're talking about a project or an area of town or just something about, state news that might be pertinent to you, And
it's good to have a photo of yourself when possible as well. It doesn't have to be a fancy professional photo, decent selfie. It's because people often don't pay attention to who wrote something. So if they're seeing you with the information, and you can also use this, take pictures of yourself around town and say, so I was here at town hall today and I found out blah, 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 with a picture of you at town hall. Right. So that they will see, there you are at town hall, there you are at the library, there you are at the school, there you are at the concert in the park, whatever it is.
Acting official and acting, like in your role, whatever role.
And not just official, but human. Because you need to remind people, I'm your neighbor. So when they see you at the grocery store they shop at, and they see you at the park they go to, and they see you at the school their kids go to, it reminds them that you're not a politician in politician land, which is, I think, what a lot of people think these days because of how divisive politics is. And the other thing too is by getting into the nuance of these things, you can make clear, here's my opinion, but here's what the other side thinks, and they have some good points too. You never hear that in national politics. So by saying that, people say, oh, this is someone who actually thinks things through and doesn't just toe the party line. So, sharing that kind of information, whether it's text or video, and both have their advantages. Video is good because it's more personal, but not everyone's going to watch it. Text is easier to engage with, but not as gripping. It's good to do both. And if you have the time, the best thing to do is a video with text that goes with it, explains what the video talks about.
Right. And also, I think if you do Facebook Lives now, Facebook transcribes all the videos, I believe.
I believe they do, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think it's necessarily on uploaded video, but I think if it's Facebook Live video, then they do. So, which is great because most people don't turn the audio on their video.
Yes.
They watch it silent, and just so if you're just doing nothing, which is why I always start my videos going like, do something to see if you can get them.
Well, they don't unmute because they don't want to disturb the person in the next stall while they're watching.
Right.
Because a great deal of content is consumed on toilets. So keep that in mind. That's why there's actually with YouTube, they figured out there's certain lengths of videos. And one of those, one length is 1 minute, one length is 3 minutes, one length is about 10 minutes, then 30, and then 60. And, think about what 3 and 10 minutes line up to. It's because people often watch a video while they're doing something else. If you catch my drift.
And a 10-minute video is a really long video. If you're doing it, it's a long video.
Yeah, it's got to be really, really engaging, definitely. And so another thing that can be valuable if you're in it for the long haul is building an email list. So email lists are pretty easy to build. You can go on MailChimp has a free option. I'm sure there's other services that do as well. And you can get a form through that where people can sign up, or as you're traveling around. And that's getting back to Bruce, what you were saying about a newsletter. Is a place where that can be really valuable. Every week I'm going to send out some of the stuff that I gather in my travels. I'm going to send that out to educate you on what's going on. Right. And people, they pay for the news because they want the news. And even if it's one person's perspective on the news, there's still usually enough truth in there. There's some very contentious issues where it might be slanted one way or the other, but most things are simply, what's this grant I'm hearing about, or what's happening with the old liquor store, or why is
a good example of that. I know I subscribe to both of our local state reps newsletters, and sometimes they have the same information, but it's a very good example of how their newsletter is really just one thing. It's a picture and something, and that's it. And then some contact information. How do I reach you? And so they're not spending an enormous amount of time, and until you got that going, Facebook is a great way to do sort of update of the week and just put a little head at the top or something and just send it out. So,
absolutely. Well, and that's and I'm glad you mentioned that. Contact me. The ultimate purpose of a lot of this is to get people to talk to you. Now, you're not trying to make a sale, so you don't have to get them on a sales call to close them. But still, if you can get in a conversation with someone, when Candidate goes around knocking on doors, you're doing it to get in a conversation. Right. And usually the conversation you'll get is about 30 seconds. But if somebody's willing to talk to you, making yourself available can be very powerful. And sending out a newsletter says, if you have questions, call me or email me, because then that's how, you'll often hear when you talk to people who are on campaigns or supporting candidates, they'll often say, you came to my door and talked to me for 10 minutes, and that's when I decided to join your campaign. Right. Or I met you at an event.
To me, it's outdoor knocking on my last campaign. I had people said, no one has ever come to our door. And you'll have a conversation with them, and then you'll be standing at the poll on election day, and they'll come by and they'll wave. They'll go, I'm here because you brought me here. And and local elections can be won by just a few votes. So if you can make those personal connections, it can be very powerful.
Yeah, and that's where social media is powerful, because you only knock on so many doors.
Right.
Especially in some of the areas where they're more spread out, and it takes I've done door knocking where I was knocking on 6 doors an hour because it took so long to get from one to the next to the next. How many hours do you have? And even then, knock on 6 an hour, you talk to one person. Right. Social media lets you talk to many people, or be in front of many people. And the powerful thing is, even if they never read more than a sentence of any of your posts, and they never unmute your videos or watch more than 30 seconds, they still get the impression that you're there a lot. Like, I don't know what you're saying, but you're saying a lot of it, and you seem pretty good. So that Bruce, I see him around a lot, and he seems pretty good. I don't know what he does, but I think I can trust him.
Yep.
Because familiarity breeds trust.
Right.
That's what the main thing I said I always get back to is just do a lot of it.
Right.
Whatever it is you're doing, do it a lot.
And it's a discipline. I mean, you have to, you don't have to get up every day, at 8:15, you're going to like get that post out of there. But you do need to just sort of make it part of your rhythm. That you're noticing things that you need to share, and then you need to share them and make a comment about it and put a link in there if you want to. And so it's definitely something that you have to be conscious of it and keep it up. And then it becomes a rhythm after a while.
Yep.
So.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned discipline. That's a good word too, because people are going to look at your personal page.
Right.
So you need to make sure that you are disciplined in what you're putting out. Everything you're putting out on social media counts. Just because you can't have a page for your campaign and say, well, that's my campaign page, I'll do whatever I want over here. Because people are going to go to your personal page, they're going to friend you, they're going to follow you. And so now it doesn't mean keep it. In fact, you want to be all over the place. You want pictures of your dog and your cooking and your flowers and stuff that makes you a person. But what you want to watch out for is divisive memes, especially. Now, if you want to get on divisive topics and go long form, that's your job. You're supposed to have opinions. But divisive memes, just because, I would say, short answer, just don't share memes if they're political.
Right.
Yeah, you want to share memes about movies and stuff like that. That's cool. But don't share memes about COVID. Don't share memes about gun control, abortion, the border, Trump, Biden, anything like that. Yeah. Because you may look at it and say, this is hilarious because you have a certain opinion and worldview. Someone else is going to look at it and say, that is the most offensive thing I've ever seen.
Right.
And some of the memes are actually designed intentionally by experts to be offensive and divisive. And by experts, I mean, I think mostly Russians, but there are bad actors out there who want Americans fighting each other. So they've intentionally engineered memes that they put into the social media streams that one ideology will look at and say, that's hilarious. And the other ideology will look at and say, that's offensive. I'm going to unfriend you, because America becomes weaker if we break apart along those seams. So you don't want to share and this is for everyone, but you don't want to share those memes. You don't want to share memes that your team will like and their team won't like, because we're all one team. We're all Americans. There's no like pro-America, there's an anti-America team, but they're not running on either side of the ballot. So,
and I would also add to that, just to correlate on that is, I would call it update your personal brand, where go in and, we put up our Facebook pages or posts or our site. It might be 10 years ago we did this, is go look through the about and the contacts and look at all, like basically make sure that you're comfortable with everything. What are the websites you linked in your account? Where do they go to? Is there still, because people will, I very much know what they'll do, what you're saying is they'll go in there and then they'll go down all the little rabbit holes just to see, I want to know more about this person, and they just go everywhere. So and do that same thing, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram, just make sure you're all of those little connections and how your bio is written and what you call yourself and stuff is all how you want it to be. It can be whatever you want it to be, but just make sure that you're good with it today.
Yeah,
and you're going to sort of push yourself out there into the world. So.
And if you do that well and people like it, they'll be your fan. Not just a voter who votes for you, they'll be a fan of yours. They'll be like, where can I get more? I like this guy. I can't wait for this guy to get in office because he seems really cool. Right. I could have a beer with him. And of course, local politics. They literally could have a beer with you. You want to get to the point where someone's like, so I looked at your Facebook page. I really like what you're talking about. You want to grab a beer? And, you really make those connections. But, and as you said, it's not that you want to sanitize your brand. You just want to make sure that your brand's in alignment with your values. So so if you're, pro-gay rights,
outdoor person, or maybe you're really into fantasy football, and that's something you really like, then make sure that, it lines up with, what you're doing.
But even something a little more contentious, you're really, pro-gay rights, which thankfully is not very contentious these days. Or if you're, devoutly religious and that's a big part of your identity, or you're a gun nut or whatever it is, be honest about that. As long as you're doing it in an honest, unaggressive way, not like I'm a gun nut and anyone's gonna try to take my guns away, I'll show them. It's that's what you're into, and people will resonate with you because you're into that. But yeah, you don't want to push people away, because you could be a gun nut and you could have someone who's totally against guns who still votes for you because city councilors don't make gun laws and they like what you're talking about. Other than that, unless you're just a walking vehicle to carry guns, there are some people who are basically just walking tripods, for guns to be mounted on. And they're one issue.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, you're in a campaign, you're doing your thing, you're making your posts, and you have trolls. So people are, sort of taking issue with you, or just sort of, it doesn't necessarily have to be the candidate. It might be their surrogates, it might be other people, but it's just part of the day. It's part of the game these days that you're going to have people who are going to come on and say things. So what is your advice on how to deal with that? Either they're taking issue with one of your issues, or they're just sort of being nasty and for nasty's sake.
So trolls can actually be a benefit to a candidate if you're doing your social media effectively. Because remember, all activity on a post pushes that post out to more people. So trolls create engagement. But what you want to do is you want to empower your supporters to argue with the trolls effectively. And this is where having a blog can be extremely important. So, if I support someone, I may absolutely want to argue with the troll, but I don't have time to go research the thing they're talking, because it's much easier to throw BS than to put the actual facts out. Because when you're fact checking someone, you need to be totally correct. When you're attacking someone, you don't. Mm-hmm. So as the candidate or candidate's team, if you can create a toolbox of true things, which a blog is great to store those on, then your supporters, when the troll comes out and say, I heard you ate babies, then you could have an article on your blog that talks about the fact that rumor started because you went to the support the babies breakfast and you weren't eating babies, you were eating to raise money for babies. And then they can share a link, because links give credibility.
Your examples are a little, okay. So I love that. Yeah, no, this is a great comment. So power your supporters with the tools, with the tools to engage with the trolls or the haters or the people who are just sort of trying to say stuff. You just give them a place.
And the great thing about a blog is it's write once, share many. So instead of having to write it every time you engage, because you may have 3 trolls saying the same thing in 3 different places on the same post. You don't want to have to respond to all of them, but you can't necessarily leave them unanswered, because then people are like, hey, why aren't you answering this guy? Because I answered the same thing up here. But you can't see that because of the way the threads work.
Right.
But if you have an article that says, no, I answered that in this article. So anytime you see that kind of thing, put an answer in an article. Mm-hmm. And then as the candidate, you might put the answer in the article and say, oh, I actually answered that in my blog. Here's the link.
Right.
And maybe, here's the link and the text if you want, whatever, that's fine too.
So the other thing says to me, I'm going to say here is that, and I have a blog, I have a number of blogs, is I hadn't thought about, just go back into my blog and maybe in my about page, just add a paragraph of what I'm doing. You don't have to like turn your blog over to your political, because then it's just, it doesn't sort of fit, or maybe legal issues, but you can just sort of say, for the next few months, I'm going to, you post, and you can link to specific posts or set up an extra page or something like that, where you
it's also easy to set up just a blog spot, Blogger. Yeah. Free blog that has your answer.
I would 100% recommend the Blogspot. It's easy. All you need is a Gmail account.
And Google loves it. I have
Google loves it.
I have a Blogger account that I hardly ever use, and it gets like 4,000 hits a month, and I'm written in it in 6 months.
Right. Google loves it.
It's way better than my real website in terms of traffic. But
it's easy and it's free.
And the other thing to remember is you're never going to convince a troll, but it's not about the troll. It's about who's watching. So people are watching to say, how do you deal with this person? So if the troll's in there, all arms a flailing and calling you, Satan and fascist and whatever, and fascist, communist, whatever, and you calmly respond to them and say, you know, I really appreciate your insights on this topic, and I'm glad you took the time to comment on my post, and let me just share some facts with you.
I wish you'd drive off a cliff, but I'm really happy that you did that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but if you come off as very polite and respectful, moderate, you know, the independents, the middle people whose votes you can actually capture. Now, of course, the people on your side are going to think you did amazing no matter what. The people on the other side are going to think that, why are you being so condescending? No matter what, you know, nothing you can do is right. But the people in the middle are the votes you're trying to capture.
Right.
And that's 60-70% of the electorate, many of whom would stay home if they don't have someone to vote for.
Right.
So
I think that's probably one of the best points that you've said right here, is that it isn't about the troll, it's about who's watching, and that you're really answering the question for the people who are watching, not the person who did whatever they did or whatever they said. You're really saying, I'm going to now tackle this topic for all the watchers, the people who are.
Yep.
So I think that's a really, really good perspective. It sort of takes you off of, I have to deal with this person, to like, this is a good topic they brought up, and this is how I would do it. So
yeah, and it also creates the possibility, if you answer it really well, that you could turn that into a post. So you could say, and you know, in local community, you can mention people by name because they commented publicly. So you can say, you know, Joe Schmo, or not mention by name, as you like, but you can say, you know, so Joe Schmo asked me this question, and I wanted to share the answer with everyone. Here's the question. Here's my answer, or make it a blog article, or whatever platform you want to do it, and do a video of it where you read their question and answer it. But because then you're not hiding from the question, you're right there. You'd be like, not only am I not afraid of you, I'm going to read your comment to my audience on a post and then answer it.
Right.
So now I'm not afraid of you. Your comment is so unscary. I'm going to show it to everybody.
Right.
And then I'm going to beat you.
I'm just writing these down because this is because this is going to happen in all campaigns, especially now where the gloves are sort of off and the filters are gone, and we're all sort of using social media to do this. This is going to happen. This is definitely going to happen, and you need to be able to sort of comfortably deal with this in a way that shows that you're above it and you're intelligent and you can handle all that stuff.
And one of the things that can be most powerful, because in a local community, you may know the person who's trolling you,
right?
And you may know, like, their kids go to school with your kids and whatever. And so then you could say, so let's say we're talking about a development issue, which tends to happen in a lot of local communities. Is one of the biggest things people fight about is development, because it's very permanent, and permanent and unknown and scary. So, you know, once it's built, who knows how it's going to go? So if they're saying, like, you're for the development, they're against the development, then instead of saying, well, the development is going to be great and blah, blah, you could instead say, you know, I totally understand where you're coming from, because I know where you live in town and how you're close to where the development's going to be. And I understand that you're worried about the traffic, because I've heard you mention that before. But here's some of the studies from the state, or here's some of this, or here's some of that. But actually call into the fact of, I know you, Mr. Troll. I understand why you're concerned, and I'd like to address your concerns directly, even if their comment was full of, you know, invective and accusations and saying that you're taking bribes and you're secretly a Russian communist spy and you're actually a lizard man in a human suit. You respond as if they just politely said, I have some concerns about the traffic patterns. Because then again, it makes
it's very good. It's very good.
Yeah. That whole, you know, you hear that, so that, you know, be the bigger person. And in a one-on-one encounter privately, sometimes you don't want to be the bigger person because that lets you get walked on. But here, you're in public.
Right.
Being the bigger person makes you look great. And even better if they start responding.
You know, you could go to that location and get your camera out. And do the video from that location and walk around and go, hey, well, let's just talk about it here. Or, you know, or bring the person there and say, you know, let's meet and we'll just do a live and let's see how it goes, and tell me what and that'll bring the temperature down. Hopefully. Yeah. Or you're running across the field trying to get away.
Yep. But that's is engage with, and you know, there's some people you can't engage with, and and sometimes it's still a matter of the way people communicate. They're not actually trolls. One of my good friends, I first thought he was a troll. And it's because he's just very direct and blunt. And I think he also was, before I joined the particular group, he was fed up already. So he was already jumping to the end and being like, rah, 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 rah. So as I got to know him offline, I realized that that's not what he's like offline. Offline, he's fairly thoughtful, but online, he doesn't like to type that much. And I think he types kind of slow. So he uses the minimum words possible. And one interesting thing you'll notice is the more words you use, the more polite it is. That's why many of the things that make politeness are simply extra syllables. If you please, you don't mind. If you have time, could you, pay attention to that when you know someone is rude.
The more words you use is more polite.
Yeah, generally it is. So, if you respond to an email or if you send someone an email asking for something and they reply with "got it," then you might think, "Oh, that was kind of curt," especially if you use a lot of words and they use few words. Now they might just be saying, "I'm acknowledging your email," but if they take the time to say, "Thanks for letting me know about that. I got your message and I'm going to look into that. I'll get back to you tomorrow." Right. It means basically the same thing as "got it." Right. But it's much more polite because there's more words in it. Yeah, and yeah, if you think about
that's a good, and it makes you sit and think out a better answer as opposed to just going jerk.
Yeah, yep, yeah. But if you think about words like please doesn't mean anything except it's a softener in communication. In words. But it's simply adding, and there's a whole bunch of synonyms for please, which have no particular meaning. They just make it longer.
For the thing.
Yeah. And
so we talked about using social media. We talked about the power of video. It's very powerful. We all sit and watch Netflix and Prime and TV all day, all night.
You're watching video right now.
We're watching video right now. It's almost the biggest thing we do, and so people are very comfortable with it. Talk a little bit about some of the tools that we may use to do this. I know we have, our phones are all built with Facebook Live, but are there any other tools that you sort of like that would help you get your message out?
Yes, so there are. So I mentioned MailChimp, which is a free email service, and the great thing about that is,
I think to 2,000 people. So that's going to cover.
Yeah, which and I'm pretty sure that's an entire electorate in our town in Groton. So in many towns, it's 700 people turn out to vote. So 2,000 person email list is quite dominant, and it's a tool. It's a resource you can keep over time, and use to support other people or support yourself if you run again or whatever. It's not a one and done thing. Okay. So that can be good. There's a platform called StreamYard. Which there's a free version of it, which leaves the branding on it. But if you're a candidate, then no one's going to mind if your branding looks cheap because they know you're a candidate.
It's a great tool. It's a great.
Yep. Great. I think it's $15 a month to take the branding off. But what it lets you do is pretty much like we're doing in this video live. So multiple people can log into it, and then it goes live to a Facebook page, to YouTube, to Periscope. I don't know if it does LinkedIn Live yet or not.
Some people it does.
Okay. Yes. So it lets you go live to Facebook. And so what you can do with that is you can bring other people on, and you can make your own local TV show. This is actually something I've kind of sort of thought about working on, then ran out of time. But I created the Facebook group, more voices in the room. And my thought with that is to use StreamYard to bring on people in town and interview them, like we're on TV, except it's only a limited audience. There's only 40,000 people who are going to care about what the town manager is doing in Groton. So no TV station is going to do it. But I don't need a TV station. I got a $50 a month StreamYard account. So you can use that and bring people on. It looks very professional if you use the higher end, and by between $15.
Okay. So we have MailChimp, we have StreamYard for broadcasting.
Yep.
And if you didn't even want to do that, you just do Facebook Live, which is just going to be you.
Yeah. So, if it's just you, Yep. Canva is a useful tool if you're not good at design yourself. Canva is an online design service, and it doesn't necessarily do everything for you, but you can just grab a template, change the words, and it comes out good enough. And if you have actual skill, then you can do a bit more with it.
Right.
And I thought I saw Canva Pro for $47 for life recently.
The free version is very powerful.
Yeah,
I mean, you can do pretty much everything you need with the free version. So.
Yeah, it does most of what you need. And that's That's what, and again, most of what you need is the platforms themselves: YouTube, Facebook,
Right.
Blogger,
Yep.
which is Google's blog platform. That's right there. So you don't necessarily need a lot of tools. So if you're building a business, then there's all kinds of other tools you can bring in to get some sort of heavier firepower. But for a campaign where you're trying to reach a targeted audience, but something else you could consider is Facebook groups, creating your own group.
Yeah.
Because anyone can make a group, and you don't necessarily want to make a group of just your supporters, although you can, but a group of people who support a cause you align with. So instead of a group that's Groton for Bruce Jones, a group that's people who align with residents for sensible development.
Yeah, there's a lot of hot button issues right now that you could you could do coastal resiliency. You could have a very good group around that, or conservation, or health services. Just elder care, and there's a lot of areas that you could easily sort of dabble into.
And you can also go off that by just making a group that people are going to want to join, not necessarily on an issue, but so one thing I've done, if you're in Mystic, sorry, it's already taken. I did good news in Greater Mystic.
Right.
People like good news. So I created a group for good news. There's 1,700 people in that group now. Now it's a little bit limited in what I can do with it because it's good news in Greater Mystic. So you can't really pitch anything on it. But as a politician, actually, if you're in Groton or Stonington and you're running, as long as it's good news, you can post there. It's not party specific. Anyone can post there. But so it means you can't post about that contentious thing because nothing there should make people upset. But town wins an award. If you're the one posting, hey, look, our town just won a state recognition, or hey, look, this kid just won the local high school just won the national championship.
We have one of the best senior centers in the country. It has a national award for being one of the best senior centers, and that's a great thing to celebrate.
And even if the good news is simply you taking a video of yourself, be like, do you guys realize how awesome this senior center is? I just want to talk for a minute about how great the senior center is.
That's right.
Now, so that is a fairly bald-faced way of saying, I want to put myself on camera in this group talking about something. And the senior center works, but that's fine because it fits with the rules and fits with the theme. And in Connecticut, where we are, which I imagine probably most people watching this are, but maybe not. But in Connecticut, where we are, politicians on both sides love to get into state office by bashing Connecticut. So it's bad. It's who can compete more bad news. And Republicans have one bad version, and Democrats have a different bad version. And depending on which version of why you hate Connecticut, you vote for one particular party. But there's no reason that couldn't work the other way. The candidates could instead build up, get to know me because I'm the positive candidate. And so people get to know you because you're all over town saying, check out this great thing. Have you been to this beach? This is a great beach. I love this beach. They got music here every Friday in the summer, and it's got this snack bar, and the sand is soft. And how great is that? Make people love their community more.
Right.
Because people, I can't remember the exact expression, but something people don't remember what they say, but they remember how you made them feel. So if you make them feel good about their community, about themselves, about their schools, about whatever, instead of trying to make them feel bad about their opponent. Because if you're trying to make the voters feel bad about your opponent, they're looking at your face while they're feeling bad.
Right.
And abstractly, someone else might be the reason they feel bad. But you're just making them feel stressed. And you're making them feel like, oh, the system is terrible, and everyone's fighting each other, and everyone's so negative, and you both suck. We'll stay home. But if you're going out saying nice things, basically giving people a reason, like, you know why you should love this town? Whoever you vote for, I don't even care. Vote for someone. Don't vote, whatever. You should love this town because we've got this restaurant. This restaurant's so great. We got this boardwalk. The boardwalk's so great.
Right.
Make people love the town and be the one who brings that love to them. And that can be a really powerful thing.
Right. Yeah. That's a right. And you're also just educating people on things they didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, they might not know about that restaurant or about that, place to walk, or a service that, the rec department has that they would love to go. You can go talk to the rec department and see what service is not being that nobody's taking advantage of that you have. Well,
Yep.
then you can go out there and promote that and say, hey,
Mhm.
we can,
Yep.
did you know they have kayaks over in the, off of Esker Point Beach? You can go get them. They're right there.
Yep.
You can kayak around out in the water, and it's
What
just
well, and along those lines too, if you can interview town staff and town notables on camera, and you're there with them sharing positive things, not an investigative reporter, but like, hey, yeah, oh, tell us about these kayaks. Then you're the one bringing this knowledge, and you're showing how connected you are and how engaged you are. Because that's always one of the challenges, one of the questions when you vote for someone, like, do they know what they're doing?
right.
Like, is it going to take them 2 years to figure out what they're doing and then the term's over? Or are they going to hit the ground running? Well, if you're going around being like, well, let me introduce you to, I'd like to meet Joe from Parks and Rec.
Right.
He's going to tell us about this, about our volleyball court. And when you do that, like, oh, not only do you know, but you're teaching me. Because local politics used to be a very personal thing. The largest town in New London County, where we are, is our town, Groton, with 41,000 people. It's not that big. I mean, I don't know 41,000 people is a lot to know, but if you know 2,000 people, you're pretty well connected in town. And a lot of the towns around here are smaller, 20,000, 15,000, 10,000.
Right. Some towns are so small they don't even have a police department that are very close to us here. They just have a state trooper who lives in the town, but there is no. They're just small towns.
Yeah. And so for a town of 10 or 15,000 people to not have a personal connection between the voters and the elected officials is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And it breaks down the fundamental bonds that hold the democracy together.
Right.
So fortunately, we have social media. If only the candidates will use it.
So we have social media. We've talked about a little bit the negative side, the trolls, which is clearly always going to be an issue.
Mhm.
We've talked about tools. So just some of the basic tools that you can use. We've talked about some of the different kinds of posts you can do, which could be informative posts. They can be informative ones. You can just do cheering. You can talk about issues, all that kind of stuff. We have audio, video, text, polls. I know somebody's is going to use a poll shortly here just to get a feeling of where do people sit on an issue. Because sometimes what I've seen is if you start posting on an issue, it just brings out the negative parts of it.
Yes.
But if you do a poll, you've almost directed where the conversations go. They can still make the comments, but you're sort of pushing it in here are options to think about without going to the negative. So,
and that was actually a great point. On social media, you get the extremes because people in the middle don't want to get in the fray. So they keep their opinion out of it. But the middle is very wide. And something I recommend for anyone who wants to get to know a community well is drive Uber. Drive Uber for a couple dozen hours in your community because you'll get a random assortment, everything from tourists to minimum wage workers who can't afford cars to, somebody whose Porsche broke down. These are actual stories from me. Someone whose Porsche broke down on the way to check their boat was one person I gave a ride to. But then I think right after was someone who makes minimum wage as a personal care assistant and just can't afford a car. So you'll get a random mix of the community, and they'll talk about anything because you're like their bartender. They don't, and just let them talk. Don't argue with them. Don't disagree. Just let them share.
Yeah.
And it was amazing when I was driving after the pandemic, after the vaccine, I should say.
Right.
And hearing common, everyday folks talk about the vaccine, and the biggest opinion was confused. A number of people had gotten it. And they were like, I got it. I'm glad I did.
Right.
Almost no one was against it. Everyone else was like, well, I guess I should, but I've heard this and I've heard that, and I just don't know about this. And I realized the vast majority of people who hadn't gotten it were confused, whereas no one's going to go on Facebook and comment, I just don't know, because then they're get these like, what are you, an anti-vaxxer?
They're going to share them, but really that's government's failure to communicate a clear message of what the benefits are of doing this, or your health department or somebody. It's either your town person, your local health. Like here, we're regional health, so it could be the regional health people that do it or somebody. But it's just telling you that the clear messages are not being sent out.
But again, it's back to the point of why I'm doing this is if local officials had more credibility because they were known then they could leverage that to say, you guys know me and trust me, and I'm telling you, you need to get your shot.
Yeah.
And I did see a number of them, when they got their shot, they posted a photo or a video of getting their vaccine and whatnot. But a lot of them hadn't built their brand sufficiently that people would say, well, all right, I trust them. I'll go do it.
Right.
Because a lot of the ones who've done it, they have curated social media. They're very careful what they post. They only post once a week, and it's very, their staff helps them with it. But if they were more open and friendly and be like, hey, I'm walking my dogs right now. And then 2 weeks later, after a series of friendly, engaging posts, talking to people, answering all the comments, engaging with them.
Right.
Then that's a big thing. I'm glad you brought up trolls. You need to engage with everyone.
Yeah, that's what I've learned from just, I have a number of groups, my own groups on Facebook, and one of the primary ways that I built those groups was by answering all the questions.
Yep.
Just if somebody asks you a question, and my groups are in publishing, and so it had nothing to do with this, but the theory is still the same.
Yeah.
Is engage and answer the questions and encourage people to ask questions. That's also something like, I want to hear from you. Go ahead and post your thing, because I will respond.
And the important thing is, and this is going to be emotionally difficult, but engage with the trolls.
Right.
And it can be exhausting and like, oh my God, again. But when you engage with them, people say, oh wow, he's so open. Because I've seen candidates who blocked the trolls.
Yes.
And also trolls. Most people aren't actually trolls. Trolls are like Russian hackers sitting in Vladivostok.
Right. It's just somebody that's sort of
pretending to be. Whereas, like,
particularly a fan of yours, and they just sort of say something.
But if it's someone who's in town, someone who lives, someone who's a voter, you need to engage with them.
Right.
And the engagement could be as simple as, thank you for your opinion.
Right.
You need to engage because people are watching, and you don't want the story to be this candidate blocks people, because that's the story that was. Now, I don't know how terribly abusive the people were that were being blocked. Maybe they were awful. Maybe they were the worst people in the world.
Yeah.
But that story didn't get around. The story that got around was, this candidate doesn't speak to their constituents. They, in fact, block them from their page. And
another good response, thank you for your opinion. Another one that I have seen people use quite effectively is, let's keep the conversation going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to agree with you. I may not have all the answers to that, but let's just keep it going. Let's keep the conversation going.
So. And a great one too can be along the lines of, tell me more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because often the first round of comments are buzzwords from their political information source of choice. And
sort of a bullet point. We have sort of a bullet point society. Where
yeah, and they really have no idea what those words mean. Right. I've seen this used with talking about critical race theory, which of course is a graduate level concept, and people said, do you support teaching critical race theory in high schools? And the answer was, well, if you can tell me what critical race theory means to you, I'll be happy to answer if I support it.
Right.
But obviously, if you're talking about teaching it in middle school, it's not a relevant concept. It's a talking point that's come out. And you get that on both sides, that people will assume they know what something means.
Yeah.
On the flip side, do you support banning assault rifles? Well, tell me what.
Or do you support the Green Party? And you're like, or the Green Initiative? Like,
the Green New Deal. Okay.
Green New Deal. I don't
New Deal to you.
I don't know what the Green New Deal is.
Yep.
So,
okay. What's an assault rifle to you? And so oftentimes people have just grabbed a buzzword, and they're throwing it, and they're kind of pulling this off someone else's script. But because it's not their own thing, when you say, I'd like to know more about what you mean by that,
right?
Then that could just end the conversation in a way that a observer will say, well, you did your best. You asked them questions. They didn't respond.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they go in circles and they'll just repeat themselves. And then you can say, thank you for your opinion.
Right.
Or best case scenario, you actually get in a conversation and they start to dive into you. And then you realize, oh, I get what you think is happening. Because so often when someone's they're not really a troll. They have been given the impression a certain thing is happening. They think teachers are up there saying all white people are bad and all white people are racist, which is, not necessarily what's happening. And once you realize, oh, do you think this is happening? and you can check in with them. They say, yeah, I read about it on this website. Okay, well, here's some facts. And oftentimes too, they pull national information to local.
Right.
So, well, I read that in Ohio, a teacher did this. Okay. Well, here in Connecticut, yeah, I read there's workers working for $8 an hour. Yes. But here in Connecticut, minimum wage is $13 an hour. So that's not happening here.
Right.
And so, being able to pull it to, and that can be an emotionally taxing experience. But
especially if you're on the receiving end.
One thing I recommend for dealing with that emotionally is do it with your full attention or not at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I find the most exhausting is when I'm engaging on my phone. I'm trying to do something else, and bing, because we don't
the messages are just popping in.
Yep.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, I need to respond to that comment before someone sees it. No, you don't. In fact, if you let it sit for 6 hours, one of your supporters may respond to it for you first.
Right. And that is probably one of the best tips right there. If you are coming back to people, is write it somewhere else in your Word program or on Google Doc, and let it sit, and then come back tomorrow, and it's when you post it. Don't try to engage with this stuff on the instantaneous basis.
That's even better. Yep.
Come back just where you have a little perspective, and you go, do I really want to say that, or is this really how it is? Or you like, I know in one of my groups, I will watch the thread that's going before I engage.
Yep.
I kind of like, okay, where's the mood going? What are people saying? And your supporters are often weighing in and giving advice, and you may not have to answer at all. You may go, yep, yeah, they got it. Okay, I didn't have to do a thing.
Yeah, and maintain your air of authority.
Right.
Especially if you're in office. Like in this place, you're the group
right.
admin,
right.
which is an authority position.
And usually when I do that, what I notice is by the time I come in, then that's the end of the conversation.
Okay, yeah.
It just stops. It's like
because
I spoke and nobody says anymore. And I'm an expert in that area, and I just let the people do it, and then I'll finally come in with my comment, and then it just, okay, I guess he's done. That's it. Yep. That's Bruce's view. Okay, we don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah. But this is again why I say, use a blog for your arguments, because if you were up on stage and someone started heckling you, you wouldn't put the microphone down, step off the stage, and have a conversation with the crowd. But that's what you do on social media. If you start arguing with them in the comments without having, and you're writing it every time, they're going to waste your time, and they're going to keep you going. So this is why it can be effective to ask them a bunch of questions, but there's a concept called sea lioning, which is just asking questions. Oh, I'm just asking questions. I just want to understand. I just want to know where this facts come from. But what you do is you exhaust somebody, because if they don't answer, you then say, oh, you don't have any facts? You can't back that up? And it's...
What is that called? I haven't heard that term.
Sea lioning. It's basically bludgeoning somebody to death with seemingly innocent questions.
Huh.
So that the outside observer, if you flip out on them, especially if they're being, and the best way to do it is by being polite while you're doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And say, oh, so I'm curious, where do you have any links to support that? And why do you think that? And ask those questions, but it's sea lioning when you're doing it in bad faith, or doing it strategically. But you're right. You can also use that same strategy to your benefit if they're posting on your page, and just engage them with questions.
Yeah.
But again, you're doing it in good faith as a candidate, because your goal is that a conversation will develop,
right, and
something good will come of it.
And you're teaching you're getting your points out. You're just doing it in a question format. You're getting them all out.
Yep. And of course, the algorithms love it. The more comments that go on a post, when you see a post that says 93 comments, you're like, whoa, what's going on here? I got to read this. What's everyone talking about? It's great.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. So I think I feel like I'm interviewing you.
No, you worked out great, because
I think we've covered.
It was like an interview. It worked out really well. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me on your show, Bruce.
Thanks for having me on the show. Yes, next time we'll be talking about whatever. But so I think to wrap it up, let's just wrap this up, because it'll fit right into an hour. It's very nice. We'll wrap it up. And social media, do it, engage, be involved with it. Try to play the good guy. Try to be positive in your community and share issues. tools. You have MailChimp, StreamYard, Canva. They're all basically, there are free versions of all of these online, so you have no excuse. Plus, you have the greatest TV broadcasting platform in the entire world sitting in your hand, so you can use that. And good luck with on your election and your campaign, and sort of do stuff.
And of course, given the opportunity, if there's like a social media workshop, you can be the only person there and interview the host, and then have the host record and share that video. That's a great strategy as well.
That's right. Media is media is media.
Yep.
So, there you go. So,
all right. Well, thanks for your help with this. This has been great.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. This is great. I thank you for putting this out. And theguywhoknowsaguy.com is where you can see Michael Whitehouse. And I was a participant in the Conference 21, which is behind him, which was a lot of fun. And who knows? We'll look forward to your next show on whatever it's going to be.
All right. Thanks.